Hi, we're Nia and Marianne from Seren Health Coaching. We are metabolic health coaches who are passionate about good metabolic health for everyone. We also love to chat about all things health and to share as much information as we can with people who want to make changes to their lifestyle but aren't quite sure where to start. We're going to release a new episode every fortnight on Fridays where we talk about a different aspect of health. So do subscribe and let us know what you think. We'd also love to know what you're interested in too, so if there's something you'd like us to have a chat about, do send us a message and we'll do our best to cover it soon. Do check us out at our website www.serenhealthcoaching.co.uk or find us on Instagram at Seren Health Coaching. Hello, Marianne.
Hi, Nia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. Refreshed by a lovely holiday. I didn't think too much health on holiday, which was good. But I came back thinking about something interesting because I read an article in the Observer on Sunday, which I don't usually get,
Mm-hmm.
but there wasn't anything else. And a really interesting little article on willpower. And, we talk about it a lot. What is it? How do you get more of it? Is the thing. So
And the
this was
amount of people who think they've got none at all, which can't possibly be true.
no, exactly. But how many times do we hear that?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are using the weight loss drugs will tell you that it's replacing their willpower because they didn't have
Yeah.
any. So that's,
Yeah.
we've talked about this sort of many times. But I sort of thought it would be worth a bit of a deeper dive into willpower because what is it? And what I did find out is
Mm.
that it's incredibly crucial and linked to success in our world.
Interesting.
So there are two things that sort of mark us as having a leg up in terms of success. The one is intelligence,
Mm.
which people have tried desperately to improve intelligence. Did you know that?
Mm.
There's
Mm.
enormous amounts of work being done. And of course, there are lots of other factors when you talk about intelligence, whether you grow up with books and cultures and class and education of your parents and all of that.
Yeah.
But innate intelligence, which you can test sort of differently, there's a lot of genetics in there. So the genetic component in intelligence is quite big.
Mm.
It doesn't mean it isn't modifiable, but that's interesting. So you remember the the campaign of giving your children omega-3s to make them more intelligent?
Mhm. Mhm.
Did you do that?
No.
The more were you a child given omega-3? I sort of think it was around that time. I don't know. Maybe not.
I was given vitamin C, I wasn't given omega-3.
Right. Well, no. Well, you could have obviously done much better if you'd had
Obviously, yeah. I
omega-3.
mean,
But
my mother did feed us fish, you know?
yeah, that's good. That's good.
I'm not sure
Yeah,
it was for the omega-3, but she did feed us
but the
fish.
marketing campaign around that, I remember it well because I think my kids were a bit bigger, and I thought, "Oh, I've missed the boat. They're not going to be intelligent now." Was really strong, and it still goes on. I looked it up, by the way, and there's some very interesting there's some interesting marketing going on still
Ooh.
about omega-3s and Percy pigs and other things and whatever
Percy
it is.
pigs?
Um,
Aren't they sweets?
yes, but what's the pig world one?
Peppa?
Yeah, Peppa Pig. She's a big marketer for omega-3s. Did you know
She
that?
is, she does her own
Yeah,
vitamin range. Yes,
yes, exactly.
you're quite right.
So I
I was
thought
thinking
this
about Percy pigs and have they, because they are sweets, I was like, have they laced them with
I gave
omega-3? Have I missed
I
this?
gave you a clue. I gave you a clue, just didn't pick it up. But
Sorry.
how many times don't we hear this? I haven't got any willpower.
Yeah.
So it's an innate, character trait.
I think it's for, like, everybody. It's not just healthy lifestyles, obviously.
No,
I
it's
mean,
lots of things. Yeah.
yeah, because I kind of think most people just say, "I have no willpower, I'm gonna eat the bar of chocolate." But it's self-discipline in a way, isn't it?
Yes, it's called
It's,
that.
everything else, like, if you wouldn't say, "I have no willpower, I can't train for the K," or
Yes.
"I haven't practiced my piano," or "I'm not good at handing in an assignment on time," or keeping to
Yes.
a budget. There's loads of stuff.
Exactly.
Mm.
So it affects every bit of your life and there's been whole careers concentrated on
Built.
this business. Yeah. And lots of books written, and I've got really into looking at it. So, what is it? And is it innate? And can you develop it? And can you exercise it? sort of yes and no.
Can you grow
So
it? I suppose
can
what we
you
need to know
grow
is
it?
can you grow
Because
your
do you need
willpower?
more of it? Because of course you do. If you were asked, would you want more of it? And we call it, I think, instead of willpower, because I don't like the word, self-control. So
Mm.
self-control is a sort of better definition, I think. But the short definition of it is it's our capacity to resist short-term temptations in the service of later, larger rewards or long-term goals. So it's a bit like the marshmallow stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like that Haribo advert. If you don't eat this one now, you can have two later on. Yeah,
That. So very interestingly, and we did a podcast on the marshmallow thing, and we came to the conclusion that it was very difficult to actually get conclusions off that study because there were so many other factors.
variables.
And
Yeah,
I think that's
interesting.
the problem with all the psychology research. It's so difficult. There's lots of studies, but they qualitative, obviously, not
Yeah,
quantitative.
yeah,
So, can you cultivate it? And that's the $1,000,000 question. And if you can, how can you?
yeah.
And the reason it's important to talk about it is that self control is crucial to success in the human world. Obviously, the other thing is intelligence, but that's why we dominate the planet, basically. We're much more adaptable than many animals
Mm, mm,
because of self-control and because of intelligence. So we can see around corners a bit and we know we can modify our behavior, whereas
mm.
animals find it more difficult.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting.
so that's the generalization, but also these traits are strongly associated with success in us as individuals, which is
Mm.
why it's such an important topic, particularly when you're trying to make lifestyle changes.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the biggest things that people say that I have failed to
Yes,
achieve what I was set out to achieve because I have no willpower. And
exactly.
it's almost the easiest excuse in the book, isn't
Yes,
it? You
because
just you let yourself off.
you don't take responsibility. I'm very sorry I haven't got any willpower, so although you might have it, I don't.
Yeah, it's basic. I think it's the biggest uh, excuse in the book because you can just basically say, "Well, I tried to give up smoking, but I don't have any willpower, so I couldn't do it," or "I tried to not eat the chocolate
Yes,
bar, but didn't have any willpower, so I couldn't do
yeah.
it."
I can't budget, I'm bad at it.
Yeah,
I'm bad at money,
I'm bad at money,
as if it's some inborn business.
and it's not. It's absolutely not.
Well well, some interesting stuff, and that's what I found. Both these traits, by the way, are really complex, so the problem is studying them is really difficult. But
Mm,
both of them have they have some genetic components.
okay.
And the other thing is if, say you know how wealth makes you wealthier?
Yes.
I think intelligence is a little bit the same. So when you measure intelligence, the thing is if you're successful, it sort of breeds more success.
Mm.
So it's
But
not
it's
only
self. If
innate.
you're,
Yeah, it's not
yeah.
sort of only innate, it's also self-perpetuating.
So, but if you've got good self control, does that
Yes.
mean that your children will have good self control? Because I don't think
Yes.
that's necessarily true.
Well, I think everyone has different personalities, and there's definitely some interesting personality traits that make us more amenable to maybe self-control. But again, it's really complex. So
Because
there is
it's
a
some.
genetic component for
Yeah,
sure.
so it's I mean, it's the same, isn't it, about, say, your genetic predisposition to type 2 diabetes. You've got that
Exactly.
foundation that you are
Exactly.
but you won't necessarily be pre-diabetic
No,
because it's what you
you
choose to
are
do that
not
makes the
what's the
difference.
the saying, you are not your genes.
Exactly, so loads of things obviously are
Yeah.
going to affect
Yeah.
what your self-control or your willpower ends up like. So it could be where you grow up, who
Yes. The
parents
house
you
you grow up in,
yeah, the
your
life
parents.
experiences you
Yeah.
have,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
connections,
yeah.
peers, all of
So
that.
imagine
Okay.
if you grow up in a house where there's a lot of routines and healthy habits already established for you. So you're growing up in a house where you always hang your coat up and you eat meals at a table, all those sort of things.
Mm,
Have, an innate sense of order,
yeah.
probably in a much easier way than the person who grows up in a ridiculously turbulent environment. I
No,
mean,
definitely,
yeah,
definitely. And I suppose that, if you grow up in a really stable place with all
yeah,
those stable things
yeah,
there, and then a traumatic event happens, that could again change.
exactly. So it's really complicated to look at, but something interesting that I've learned is that there's a guy called Roy Baumeister. He's American. He's written various books on willpower, and he's spent his entire career doing it and looking at it and doing studies, and there's some really interesting stuff. But one thing that I 2 things that were interesting out of the research was that you have finite amounts of willpower. So everybody has finite amounts of willpower. And
Mm,
in a way, that self-control, if you're looking to exercise it and make it better, so it's
mm.
almost like a muscle. It does get fatigued and you run out of it, but there are ways around also improving that muscle.
Yeah,
But it's complicated. Okay, so
of course.
his name was Roy Burmeister, and he looked at, for instance, students. They always take students, don't they?
Yes.
And he set them up in a group, 2 groups. So one were only allowed to eat radishes, and the other had cookies, and they were all
Okay.
in the same place. The radish group had to watch the cookie eaters, and they were pretty hungry because I think they made them hungry.
Yes.
So they had to resist those cookies all the time, okay? The other guys didn't have to resist anything.
Mm.
And then they gave them some really difficult, unsolvable puzzles to do. And the group who'd had to resist had much less perseverance than the group who'd had the cookies. So, in other words, if you have to use your willpower continually, it basically runs out.
Okay, so it's, when people want to give up alcohol, they often
Yes,
then have more addictive other habits
exactly,
like smoking.
exactly.
Or I've seen so many people give up smoking and develop an
Yeah,
addiction to food,
to sugar. Yeah.
to sugar. Yeah. So in fact, you sort of
You displace
I can see
one.
how that works.
Yeah. Yeah, because 'cause you've basically run out. So imagine if you're not, I mean, it's hard to imagine the alcohol bit, but those cravings are a daily, it's one step, one day at a time and all that. There's a
Yeah.
continual, having to resist something. When
Well,
you
that's
have to resist,
exhausting.
it's really exhausting. So then you don't resist a few other things because you just
Mm.
don't have the wherewithal.
You don't have, I suppose, actually, the problem with an addiction in that sense, so
Yeah,
something like
which
alcohol
is
or
a bit
smoking,
different, but
is
yeah.
a bit different. But because it's so all consuming and because it takes over that part of your life,
Yes,
you are
yes,
therefore expending a huge amount
yes.
of effort to give that up. And
Yes.
therefore, I
So
can
then you
see
run
how
out of
you run out of everything
willpower or
else. Yeah.
self-control, whatever you want to call it. So they
Yeah.
looked at students and exams. They were really interesting. So when students have to cram for exams, by the way, some people aren't crammers. I've always wanted to be one of them, never was. But now I've learned that I could have been if I just organized myself. But the crammers, they literally run out of every other energy. So they won't eat, they won't sleep, they won't wash, they won't change their sheets, they won't, they're literally getting a terrible mess in every other bit of their lives while they cram for an exam.
Yeah, and that's so true. If anyone has, if you think back to your days at university, for example, when you live
Yeah.
with people who are crammers, and
Yes.
I lived
You
with,
would have
I
noticed, wouldn't you?
definitely lived with a few people who were crammers. They literally never came out of their rooms
They
before the
smelt in the
exam.
end, but they
Yeah,
only
the
had.
washing up
Yeah.
piled up. They were not
Yes,
able to
yes, yes,
function. It was
yes.
just like their room was like a hovel. And then after the exam,
Yeah,
it was like a weight was lifted and then the whole like
yeah,
situation
yeah,
changed. They were
yeah, yeah,
clean,
yeah,
they washed and they changed their beds and everything. Everything was just, somehow
yeah.
the focus of the exam meant
It
it was
took
like tunnel
everything out of
vision.
them.
It was tunnel vision. There was
Yeah.
nothing else that mattered. Whereas I physically cannot study in a room that looks like that.
Yeah,
I
so
just couldn't.
interesting. So the
Yeah,
order is something you really need. These guys learned to completely focus on one thing, and the order went out the
the
window of
window.
everything else. But you can see how you transfer that to life.
Mm,
So people with very well developed self-control find life easier in general because they
interesting.
develop routines that become automated habits. And we sort of understand that because that's our job. And it saves the energy for other things. So they
Okay.
tend to, they don't just use willpower for emergency situations. They're
Emergency.
already pre-thinking all of that. So they'll
Okay.
perform better at school, they'll have more successful relationships, there'll be better community connections. They'll earn more, be more altruistic, and generally happier. All because they have that baseline lack of stress. So you can imagine
Mm,
people the opposite, things stressful. They have less
mm,
self-control right from the beginning. Getting up in the morning is terrible because they've slept too little. They don't have breakfast. They run out the door. They get two coffees. Can you see that the stress they use in decision making all day because they don't have automated habits starts to drain that willpower. So when they get home, they have a glass of wine because that makes them feel a bit better. This is a very typical sort of pattern. Then they have an argument with their partner because they've just run out of energy, basically, and they're not
mm.
very nice to their kids or whatever it is. So it's really, really important if we can to strengthen our self
Willpower,
control.
self-control.
Yeah, and
And
there are ways to do it.
there are ways to do it, which is great, but it's not just also about that, is it? It's about what you set yourselves up for at the beginning. So
Yeah,
there's a
set
huge amount of
yourself up
people,
well.
yeah, there's a huge amount of people wanting unrealistic things.
Don't we know that?
And I
Right.
think, ultimately that's week 2 and you haven't lost 2 stone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
well,
yeah. So New Year's resolutions, is very typical of the person. So you're much less likely, if you're very self-controlled, to make unrealistic goals, interestingly. So the person who wants to get out the mess they're in is often very unrealistic in what they think they can do. And
Mm,
they're very bad at planning also. So where the self-controller thinking about handing in an assignment, you'll already have done a lot of the reading, you'll have already gathered your data, whatever it is, the way you work.
mm,
Remember that person who's the procrastinating, I only work under pressure, I'm sorry, person.
mm,
They are already in a mess by the time they start that assignment, and they plan far too little time because it always takes longer than you think. So
mm.
then they hand in a really half-mast, and there's some really good evidence for this, by the way.
And they're the ones that then end up sitting in the library doing it all
Yeah,
through the night.
but they also hand in worse work. So,
Well, of course, yeah, of course,
yeah, they just
the work is never
can't
gonna be as good quality.
because they haven't discussed it with their peers, they haven't discussed it with their lecturer, they haven't let things gel, so they've got better, all of that.
Mm.
So easy to see, okay. So and people like that often want to make changes and they want to see results quickly. They don't like the long-term gratuity thing.
And I think that our world is set up now that
Yes,
we don't
more
want
and
to
more.
wait for anything. More and
Yes,
more has
more
to
and more.
be
Yeah.
now. I mean, and this is kind of a good thing and a bad thing. And if it's a really interesting thing, and I think maybe like same day delivery or next day
Yes.
delivery has a lot to do
Yes.
with that. Because
Yes,
do you remember
next day
when?
delivery. I mean, who wants to wait 4 days for a parcel?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's awful, isn't it? That
Yeah, yeah,
we are
yeah.
now in that thing where it's just now, 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 now,
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
and if I don't get it now, it's not worth waiting for. And obviously, there are some reasons why you definitely need next day delivery for
Yeah,
things,
of course.
and that's really important.
Maybe your
But
insulin, but,
yeah, but for the
not a lot
majority,
else.
not a lot else. Yeah, we can and we do overcome huge challenges, and we have to remember that we are incredibly well set up in this world,
Yes.
and we have a lot that we can actually manage without.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think perhaps that doesn't help. And then also, it doesn't help that we are bombarded with people who, one we always talk about is before and after pictures on social media.
Yes,
And you
the sort of
only see the
dieting
before and
world.
after. You
Yeah,
never see the hard graft that went into that in the interim period and
yeah.
all of the consistency that went into getting there.
But you're usually selling something, aren't you?
Well, well, yes, that too. But even if it's not, even if it's just
Yeah.
somebody who has actually done it the right
Yes, yes,
way,
you're right.
you don't see the bit in the middle, and
No.
therefore you just assume your brain makes the leap from the beginning to the end.
I
Why
want
can't I
that.
be like that?
I want that. Yeah. And they talk about some interesting phenomena which we know well. One is particularly in the diet weight management world, there's a lot of radical promises, and we see that
Mm,
all the time. And the cycle of weight loss and gain, which actually becomes hugely detrimental to the person. And the feeling of deprivation, which goes with those sort of dieting mindsets,
mm,
which then bodes not well for long-term results, basically.
mm,
Um, and the other thing they talk about is that I'm going off plan, and now I'm off plan. I'm going to binge myself silly, and I'll start again tomorrow. They actually call it something, and I can't remember exactly what they call it, but a really interesting phenomena, very typical of this sort of setup. So you set yourself up with unrealistic goals. you do pretty well for a while and then it all goes wrong. And the
Mm,
cycle is repeated ad
mm,
infinitum.
mm.
Anyway, what I did get to, and probably we should talk about, is some strategies because it doesn't matter where we all start. It's that epigenetics thing, isn't it?
Yep.
You don't have to be your genes. We all start with maybe some personality traits, but let's not use those as a reason for failing to do the things we really want to do in life. And
Mm,
so it doesn't matter whether you say you haven't got any willpower and you weren't born with a lot of self control, or maybe your mother was a bit wayward and you didn't hang your coat up, or whatever. All that. Let's just start where we are. And so the first thing is awareness, really, and knowing your limits. So beginning
yeah.
to realize that maybe you are that procrastinator. And why are you? And can you change that? Because you can. And I tell you what, although our world's much more complicated in many ways now, which is one of the problems, it also has incredible tools. So the digital tool era is with us in a big way.
Yeah, and there
There's
are benefits to all of those
Yes,
things,
there's
actually. For some
programs for
people, they're very
everything.
helpful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For some people, they're annoying, but for people who need that kind of
No,
input,
and
that's really
even
useful.
if they're annoying, I've learned that they work. That's the silly thing.
Mm,
So, I've just been to the hygienist and we're talking about electric toothbrushes. And the fact is, you get a smiley face on your electric toothbrush when you've done 2 minutes brushing.
mm,
And 2 minutes feels like a long time. You never used to do it with a manual toothbrush. But 2 minutes and you get a smiley face. How silly. Why would you want the smiley face? It's completely silly. But people do. So
yeah,
very tiny little rewards make a huge difference. But
yeah.
anyway, first of all, know your limits. Start each day anew with your banked willpower. So if you sleep enough, you'll start the day and certainly get a bit of
Feeling better.
breakfast,
Yeah,
feeling better, and you'll have banked that willpower. So can you then develop routines and habits that cut out the need for expending all that self control on that daily round of decision making, which is what drains your self-control
yeah.
muscle.
So
You can.
make your
Yeah,
decisions in advance, as it were. Sort of,
exactly. They call it, rather than defense, they call it offense. So
yeah,
so making plans that make it's a bit like getting to an airport in good time and having a coffee and chatting and doing a bit of shopping, then racing in a taxi late for your plane
mm,
and the stress involved. Imagine that the reserves it uses up. So
mm.
I think in life you just learn that planning is pretty. I mean, it might be
Planning is
boring,
helpful.
but it's pretty helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So look
So
at your environment.
those
Yeah.
people who batch cook, for example,
Yes.
they've taken out the need for that daily
Yes.
look in the
Yes.
fridge. What have I got? What am I going to make? And even though it might be boring for a while, they know, okay,
It's
tonight
worth the
is.
boring. So set
Yeah.
yourself up. Remove temptations, by the way. I mean, that's, so simple, isn't it? Why would you
Mm.
put stuff in your fridge that you don't want to eat?
Well, some people say to me, oh, well, I have to have crisps in
Yes.
the house for my
Yeah.
kids
Yeah,
or for my
though
husband. I
I've
say,
just had
no,
that this morning. Somebody said,
really?
"Well, my husband and kids," I said, "Well, they have to learn too.
Yeah,
Slowly.
absolutely.
Just take
They
one
don't
thing
have
out
to
of."
have it.
No,
You can tell them no.
can. You can just do one thing at a time. Remove biscuits or remove cereal, whatever you decide. You don't have to do
Yeah.
it all in one go.
Yeah.
But they're
But
adaptable, kids. I know I'm not sure about husbands, but that's their problem, really. They can buy their own cereal, can't they? I mean,
they can sort themselves out and they can put it in a place where they know about that it's not a
exactly.
thing for you. You are allowed to say, I'm not comfortable with having that in my cupboard looking at
Yeah.
me in the face.
I'm not eating that anymore,
I'm not
so
eating that anymore, so
if
I would
you want
appreciate
to.
it. You put it somewhere else. And that's part of your support of me.
Funnily enough, there's good evidence that if you adopt good habits, and the people you live with will eventually get some benefit. So,
Yeah.
and the other way around, if you're friends with people who are very fit, you'll be very aware about fitness, and you might, I don't know, go for a run after work or whatever it is.
Mm,
If
mm,
you're friends with people who go to the pub, you're more likely to go to the pub. So there's quite interesting stuff about the people you live with
mm, mm.
and how that works both ways. But looking at your environment and setting yourself up for success, I mean, what's wrong with that? The next bit is mindset, and we've sort of touched on this. if you make it a change, a positive thing, and it's not about deprivation, denial, it will guarantee success almost. And
Yeah.
the other way will guarantee failure in the long term because you get resentful and then you think, why me? Everyone else is allowed to have ice cream. Why can't I? Well, there you
Yeah,
go.
and then
Off you
you
go.
watch people and then you watch skinny people eat the ice cream,
Yeah.
and you don't know what they've done
No,
90% of the
they've
time.
probably had much less lunch or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
and maybe
Yeah.
they've just decided that today, they've really wanted to enjoy themselves, but you look at them and you think, "Well, that's just not fair. They can
Yeah.
eat whatever they
Yeah.
want. They'll
And
never put
I'm
on a
and I'm
pound, and
doing it,
I'm
and that's
not."
it.
Yeah,
And now I've messed up, I'll just mess up some more.
yeah.
So that's
So it's,
free, typical.
and I
Yeah.
think positive mindset is really
Oh,
tricky.
it's
Now,
huge. It's
my
huge.
husband did,
Yeah.
an online training thing about behaviour for
Yeah.
football training because it was fascinating what they said. It was like 80% of your thoughts every day are negative, like, they're always
Yes.
negative.
Yes. That's really interesting.
And
And
this
if
is
you
basically your default setting is
yeah,
always.
could you I mean, you almost want to, audio your subconscious, don't you? And you would be shocked at how much negativity comes through.
Yeah. And
Unless you're
yeah.
like me and I'm always praising myself, but I
Oh,
mean,
I'd love to be
I'm
like you.
unusual.
I would love to be like
It's a
you.
little gift I have. I mean, it's not foolproof, but I have more of it than most. And I think it maybe that comes from the training as a child. I don't know. It's another discussion, really. But
Mm.
I mean, the goal setting's another one, and we know this, endlessly. Small goals, one at a time. Don't over egg it. As soon as you over egg it, you're going to fall over, and it won't be your fault. Build in small rewards or big rewards, actually. And if you give up smoking, look at all the money you've saved and go to the Bahamas. I mean, why not?
Why not?
Build
Or
in
just think
whatever
about how
you
many chest infections you're not gonna get, or
yeah,
how lovely it's
that's
gonna
the
be to not.
pharmacist in you, that is the
Sorry.
pharmacist in you. Yeah, but rewards are
Be
really
delighted about that.
important, and
Yeah.
there was a nice story in the book about a woman who she was really good in all areas of her life, except, she couldn't get her sort of teeth hygiene right, so she hated doing the cleaning and stuff,
Mm.
and she couldn't understand. She swam for an hour every day, but flossing was beyond her on a regular basis.
Yeah, I get
And
that's
then she had this
boring.
epiphany where she said, "If I floss tonight, I can take 4 minutes off my swim tomorrow." And 4 years later, she's still doing it.
In what way did she take 4 minutes off her swim?
So
She
instead
finished
of
4
an
minutes
hour, she
early?
did 1 hour 56. No, she did 56
6
minutes of
minutes.
swimming. But she said it was the silliest thing in the world, but it
Hmm.
sort of was this it's a bit like me having a hot shower after a row, I'm still doing it.
Hmm.
And it's still
I
enough
I
reward.
yeah, it's interesting. So I have a client who found something that
Yeah,
really works for them,
yeah,
and that was just, like, instead of, like, building stuff up to be a big thing, just counting down from 5 and just doing it, and that is
yes,
working
yeah.
amazingly well for them.
Interesting. So that's part of that to-do list culture, and we'll talk about
Mm.
that. So that's another interesting thing. So people who make to-do lists, and I mean, I'm not very good at them. You're very good at them.
I'm very good at them. My whole
My
life is a blooming
subconscious
list.
still worries about the things I've got to do, but I don't put them down. When you put them down, you relinquish some of the subconscious noise that goes on. So
Yeah.
I'll still be thinking I need to book those tickets or I need to do whatever. You'll
That's
have it on a
yeah.
list and you're
I
more
know.
likely actually to have the energy to do it than I am because I spend so much time ruminating about not doing it.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
really interesting
that's
phenomenon.
that's one of those things that's a tool that they use in,
Yes.
cognitive behavior
Yeah.
therapy for insomnia, and it's called brain dumping at the end
Yes.
of the
So
day,
stick it all on
where
some
you
paper.
write it all down, and all the stuff that would be going around your head, like, "I must remember to do this tomorrow, and have
Yeah,
I done
yeah.
this yet?" And
Well,
is
I
all
haven't
written
been very
down.
good at that.
Yeah.
I'll do that tomorrow. I'll think about it tomorrow. And that's the only way, interestingly, that they talk about a positive use of procrastination, which we'll look at another time. But
Mm,
so positive procrastination where you say, okay, I can have a chocolate, but I'll have it after dinner. And then I've got a choice and I can have it or not. But
mm.
but I want it now. But you can procrastinate the
Yeah,
whole
that's urge
yeah.
surfing, isn't it? And I do that a
And the
lot with
same
people. I
thing.
say, you can use 2 things. You can use displacement and you can use distraction, and you can use a bit of both of them together. So you can say, "I want the bar of chocolate. I'm not gonna have it for 20 minutes. So go off and do something else and you might not want it. So, but if that doesn't work, then what could you have instead? Like, could you have a handful of nuts
Yeah.
or an apple or whatever? And if that still doesn't work, then at least even if you do end up eating the chocolate, you have exercised that muscle and
Yes.
eaten a healthier snack, which might make
Yes.
you fuller before you eat the chocolate and therefore you might not eat as much. So all of these things do work. It's just, it's
When they're
foxing your
quite
brain, isn't it?
silly, some of them, and it's yes, your brain's a really interesting place. The whole gadget world is changing quite a lot of things for people. So, um, things like monitoring, and monitoring's the first bit of the gadget world, by the way.
Everyone
So
loves to monitor and track.
the pedometer world, where you look at things rather than don't look at them.
Mm,
So how often do you surf websites when you're at work that are not related to your work? So they did lots of studies and people to it's about a third of your time. You're looking at stuff on the internet that isn't relevant.
yeah, more than a third of the time.
Third, yeah, but that's what people, will own up to. So could you use that differently by switching off the ability to go to those websites? And some workplaces do that. So you're not
Hmm.
it's like taking temptation out of your fridge. I mean, people think it's morally not the same, but actually doesn't matter. You're just offensing rather than defensing, you know. You're seeing
It's
that
really important. It's part of looking after yourself. It's self care.
exactly.
It's self protection. I mean, if you were an alcoholic, you would not have a fridge full
No.
of alcohol. You just
Why
could
would
not.
you?
Why would you
No.
do that to yourself? That is
Why
just
would you do it with
harsh.
chocolate, ice cream, and
It's
whatever
exactly the
else
same.
you
Yeah.
love to eat? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to someone this morning, they said, "Oh, yes, but my children and husband are exactly the same." Which I don't really buy.
You don't have it in it's a protective mechanism. It's the same as
Yeah.
giving somebody
Yeah.
who's got
Be nice to
shed
yourself.
loads of debt, an unlimited credit card and
Yes, so there's
you
some
know,
lovely programs with monitor spending, and then they feedback, and the other thing they do interesting is they say don't over egg the goals, again, with
do it
spending. So
small.
if you eat out in restaurants and you spend, I don't know, £400 a month, don't suddenly say you're not gonna spend any. Go to 300 and work that way, and it's exactly the same idea, that if you over egg those goals, you fail, and then you
Mm,
fail and then you feel awful, and then you fail again. So, really clever stuff. So,
mm.
monitoring and also setting up sort of healthy competition with yourself.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I
There's
like all
no
that. I mean,
I
it
like all that
appeals to
stuff.
people like me.
Yeah. But I think all of
How
these
many
things
steps have I done? I mean, these very stupid steps
my
in a
dad
way.
my dad doesn't need to monitor his steps, but he does.
Does, yeah,
And
yeah. 'Cause it appeals to him.
he
Yeah.
competes with himself and he'll
Yeah, I love
sometimes
that.
send me a message going, "Look how many steps I did today,"
But
like
would it
over and
would
above
it do
my
him
thing.
any harm? No. Well, it does
No.
him a lot of good.
Yeah,
And in the
and I
world
love the Active 10 NHS app because I use this with loads of people so that they can
okay.
make sure they're walking at the right pace. But
Yes.
I love it when I'm showing them this is
And
completely
yours is better
and mine
than
is like,
10.
"Look, this morning I did the school run and 48
Uh,
minutes of walking and 41 of them were brisk and look how many trophies I've got." I mean, so
yeah,
sad.
I know it's so stupid, but it works. And whatever
Yeah,
works is what you're gonna use.
absolutely.
By the way, weight
Okay.
and dieting, there's a whole huge section on this because this is like the person who I was talking to this morning, and they said they'd given up smoking. They couldn't understand why they couldn't give up bad food. And I said, well, that's because there's
You've not got anything
unfortunately
left.
no black and white. So smoking's black and white and in many
Yeah,
ways easier. Food is a whole nother world. And there's a lot of overlays, as we know. But
yeah.
the suggestions are don't diet because we sort of know once you start to restrict that you're into the problems of denial and restriction. Now, it
Mm,
doesn't mean don't diet as in don't, um,
don't change.
don't change your diet, but very restrictive diets often fail for these
I
reasons.
have a good new thing that I read. Someone else had another health coach had written this. I don't
Mm.
know where they got it from, but it was don't diet, edit.
Yes, edit, lovely
Edit your
word.
eating
Yes.
habits. I thought that was a
So
brilliant
take
idea.
out the mid-morning
Which is all about
coffee.
what we've said about,
Yes.
displacing with the better
Yeah,
quality.
yeah. But the other thing there's an overlay in food here is the biology involved, and so it's much more complicated. So your biology also rears its head, and there's very good evidence that the first restrictive regime you do works really well, the second works a bit, and the third starts to fail. And that's
Yeah.
because there's a whole load of stuff around, and we know this because we've done this for years, and
But
we've
so many
argued with
people say, "Well,
many
last time I
people.
did this,
Yes, it
I
worked really
lost
well,
6
but
pounds in
now
the
I
first week.
can't.
Now I can't." Yeah,
And they're
why is that?
eating
Yeah.
less calories than they ever started with, and it's
Yeah.
really sad to get into those cycles, and we sort of know about that, so that's what you wanna avoid. So
Mm.
depressing for everybody. But you can see how having a stressful day, so stress is the other big thing we don't talk about, where
Mm.
you're making hard decisions all day and it depletes your self-control bank. So you get home and you've commuted, the traffic's been terrible, your children are bickering in the back, you argue with your spouse, you've got health issues, money worries. See, all the stuff, this background stuff is really bad for developing self control because
You
how
can
are you
see
meant
how
to have
people
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
you can see how people then think, "Well, I deserve
Yeah.
my glass of wine, I deserve my bar
Well,
of chocolates,
you're just
I
looking
deserve to
for
buy whatever it is I want to
comfort.
buy and that's in my cart," because all of that is like a dopamine thing to make you feel better from the
Comfort.
fact you're
Yeah.
stressed to the teeth.
But you don't recognize it. So you'll recognize it by realizing that very simple decisions get harder and harder. So people
Mm.
really struggle. They wrestle with making quite small decisions that they should make really easily. You find resisting temptations gets much harder. You drink alcohol, you overeat. You're less likely to compromise and start an argument with your partner. Chronic pain is another one that depletes your self control, by the way. You can imagine
Absolutely. Yeah,
energy
yeah.
levels for doing anything are so small.
Mm.
Interestingly, religions, in any form, are often sources of healthy routines and self-control. So I
Mm.
thought that was interesting.
Mm.
Often the way you live, is, self-care and self-control is part of religious teachings.
Yeah, it's yeah, definitely in some religions, yeah. I think also, yeah, in most, yeah. I think ultimately, in a way, it all comes down to how you value yourself. If you value yourself and you think you're worth looking after, you will
And
actually,
how do you get to that, and is that the source of the whole thing? I
yeah.
don't know, I think personality traits definitely play a part, and you might because you're less successful, because you're less good at self-control, it's
Mm.
sort of a self-perpetuating thing where you think, "Oh, I just can't ever remember my PE kit, I'll just have to go to detention again." You almost give up rather than putting a reminder on your phone that beeps or whatever.
In a way, doesn't that come down to support when you are in your formative years, like we
I
said,
wonder,
parenting styles and
wonder.
environments. Like if your
Yes.
parent, if you,
Yeah.
I know you told me, didn't you, that your children had to remember their PE kit because
Yeah,
you are not
otherwise
going to
they
come and get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So is it the support that, I
Yes. Partly,
I did with my
partly.
children, make them pack their school bags, and
Yes.
then when we leave the house, we have like a run through list. What do we need today? Have we got
Yes,
everything we
yes,
need today?
interesting.
And
Okay.
then they, in their heads, are
Yeah,
categorizing it for
yeah,
themselves, and it's
yeah,
like an
yeah.
independence thing,
And
isn't
one
it?
day you won't even have to say that because they'll
Well,
have
but
done
hopefully by
that.
the time that the eldest now starts secondary school in September, he'll have that routine in his head. So when he walks out
Yeah.
the door, he knows that we do this
And I
checklist
I
almost.
suppose some children are better at it than others right from the beginning. I
But
suppose
you've
that's the
got to
point.
help them, haven't
Yes.
you? That's the
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Your job as a parent is not to be their best friend, it's to help them navigate the world
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and to
And
set
if
them
you
up with
haven't
these
got much
things.
self-control yourself, and there's a whole thing on parenting we might look at one day about teaching self-control. But if you haven't got any yourself, it's quite difficult to teach your children. So
Mm.
in a way, it's all about doing yourself first. And you're right, non-judgmental self-awareness. And the
Mm.
less you screw up, the less self-control you need to use on an everyday basis. I mean, that is, you don't miss appointments because you have a calendar. It's just so easy when you think about it.
Mm.
There was a writer, an author who wrote for 2 hours every day, and he didn't always wanna do it, but it was
Mm.
the way he did write books. But he said he could sit at a desk, and if he didn't write, it was fine, he could just stare out the window, but he had to sit there for 2 hours. And, guess
Well,
what he did?
it's that's
He did
that's
right.
self-control, isn't it?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
setting
yeah.
yourself up for good routines. And we all sit at our desks and don't wanna do work. We all
Yeah,
sit there and
yeah. But
procrastinate.
some of us are better at doing it. That's the thing, and I'm interested in that, that we are also ourselves. So there are some of us that struggle more. Procrastination is part of this thing, actually. I mean, an important part of willpower is procrastination.
I think that there is a benefit to letting yourself off the hook sometimes.
Yes, of course.
I think there's a balance because you can become I certainly know that I can become
Yes,
far too
obsessed with
obsessed with
yeah.
getting it right.
Yeah, but
And
that's self-control in a sense, isn't it?
yeah.
But just to finish off with, a lovely little study where students were told at the beginning of a semester what date the assignment was for that semester, and they
Mm.
were told that they had to hand it in on a Friday at 5 o'clock or whatever it is. But if they didn't make that, they could do the next Tuesday, and if they didn't make the next Tuesday, they could do the next Friday, which was a week after the initial hand-in date. The procrastinators in the class, which they'd already done a questionnaire and sort of made a group of what they thought were the procrastinators, the researchers looked at, they didn't even take the first 2 dates into their diaries. They were only gonna hand in the following Friday,
Love
whereas
that.
whereas you would have been handing in
I
the
would have done
first
it in
one.
the first date,
Yeah,
obviously, Marianne,
yeah,
obviously.
interesting, interesting. So
That's so sad.
yeah, and the procrastinators basically did worse academically
But
on
this is the
all
question
counts.
I would ask about that, you see. This is where I would sit with
Yeah,
that. So you've given me 3 dates,
yeah,
and I would like to aim for the first one, but I also want to know what else am I doing at the same time?
yeah.
Because you could make it harder for people, couldn't you? You could
Yes,
say
and
you've got
people
until this
do
time
make
to
it
hand
harder.
in, but
Yeah,
there are 2 other assignments that need to be handed in at the same time.
yes. Well, you're too clever for this, but, what they did find interesting is that the procrastinators were much happier and healthier. They
Mm,
didn't go to the health clinic. The people who were really struggling to get the assignment in on the first date were
mm,
actually struggling with life in general more. The procrastinators got more sleep, went to more parties, made more connections, generally
yeah,
didn't worry too much about the assignment until that
yeah,
that cutoff point. Then they really got ill. So the perfectionist who has to get that first date might actually find other negatives.
yeah. Oh,
It's not
definitely.
all positive.
It's not all
But
positive,
that's
no.
me saying that as a procrastinator, isn't it? I've
Yes,
always
but
got a
me as a
reason.
as a perfectionist, I can say that is actually true.
That's
It's
why we
there's
work
that's why
well
we work so well
together.
together,
Yeah.
indeed.
Uh-huh.
Righty ho, lovely to
All right.
chat. See
Nice
you
to
next time.
talk. See you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.